Okay, this is a continuation of Chapter 3 in Charlotte's Web. The world is a wonderful place when you're young. I can see that, replied Wilbur. He gave a jump in the air, twirled, ran a few steps, stopped, looked all around, sniffed in the smells of the afternoon, and then set off walking down through the orchard. Pausing in the shade of the apple tree, he put his strong snout into the ground, began pushing, digging, and rooting. He felt very happy. He had plowed up quite a piece of ground before anyone noticed him. Mrs. Zuckerman was the first one to see him. She saw him from the kitchen window, and she immediately shouted for the men. "Homer!" she cried. "Pigs out! Lurvy! Pigs out! Homer! Lurvy! Pigs out! He's down there under that apple tree." "Now the trouble starts," thought Wilbur. "Now I'll catch it." The goose heard the racket, and she too started hollering. "Run, run, run downhill! Make for the woods!" she shouted to Wilbur. "They'll never, never catch you in the woods!" The cocker spaniel heard the commotion, and he ran out from the barn to join the chase. Mr. Zuckerman heard, and he came out of his machine shed where he was mending a tool. Lurvy, the hired man, heard noise and came up from the asparagus patch where he was pulling weeds. Everyone walked toward Wilbur, and Wilbur did not know what to do. The woods seemed a long way off, and anyway, he'd never been down in the woods. He wasn't even sure he would like it. "Get around back of him, Lurvy," said Mr. Zuckerman. "Drive him toward the barn. Take it easy. Don't rush him. I'll go get some slops." The news of Wilbur's escape rapidly spread among the animals at the place. Whenever any creature broke loose on the Zuckerman's farm, the event was of great interest to the others. The goose shouted to the nearest cow that Wilbur was free, and soon all the cows knew. Then one of the cows told the sheep, and then all the sheep knew. The lambs learned about it from their mothers. The horses in their stalls in the barn picked up their ears when they heard the goose holler, and soon the horses caught on to everything that was happening. "Wilbur's out," they said. Every animal stirred and lifted its head and became excited to know that one of its friends had got free and was no longer tied up or penned up. Wilbur didn't know what to do or which way to run. It seemed as though everyone was after him. "If this is what it's like to be free," he thought, "I believe I'd rather be penned up in my yard." The cocker spaniel was sneaking up on him from one side. Lurvy, the hired man, was sneaking from the other side. Mrs. Zuckerman stood ready to head him off if he went into the garden, and now Mr. Zuckerman was coming down carrying a pail. "This is really awful," thought Wilbur. "Why doesn't Fern come?" And he began to cry. The goose took command and began to give orders. "Don't just stand there, Wilbur. Dodge about, dodge about, dodge about," cried the goose. "Skip around, run toward me, slip in and out, in and out, in and out. Make for the woods, twist and turn." The cocker spaniel ran for Wilbur's hind leg. Wilbur jumped and ran. Lurvy reached out and grabbed. Mrs. Zuckerman screamed at Lurvy. The goose cheered for Wilbur. And then Wilbur dodged between Lurvy's legs. Lurvy missed Wilbur and grabbed the spaniel instead. "Nicely done," cried the goose. "Try it again, try it again." "Run downhill," said the cows. "Run toward me," yelled the gander. "Run uphill," said the sheep. "Turn and twist," honked the goose. "Jump and dance," cried the rooster. "Look out for Lurvy," called the cows. "Look out for Zuckerman," yelled the gander. "Watch out for the dog," cried the sheep. Listen to me," screamed the goose. Poor Wilbur was dazed and frightened by this hullabaloo. He didn't like being the center of this fuss. He tried to follow the instructions his friends were giving, but he could not run downhill and uphill at the same time, and he couldn't turn and twist when he was jumping and dancing, and he was crying so hard he could barely see anything that was happening. After all, Wilbur was a very young pig, not much more than a baby, really. He wished Fern were there to take him in her arms and comfort him. When he looked up and saw Mr. Zuckerman standing quite close holding a pail of warm slops, he felt relieved. The smell was delicious. Warm milk, potato skins, wheat middlings, Kellogg's cornflakes, and a popover left from the Zuckerman's breakfast. "Come, pig," said Mr. Zuckerman, tapping the pail. "Come, pig." Wilbur took a step toward the pail. "No, no, no," said the goose. "It's the old pail trick, Wilbur. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. He's trying to lure you back in captivity. He's appealing to your stomach." Wilbur did not care. The food smelled appetizing. He took a step toward the pail. "Pig, pig," said Mr. Zuckerman in a kind voice, and he began walking slowly toward the barnyard, looking all about innocently as if he didn't know that that little white pig was following behind him. "You'll be sorry, sorry, sorry," said the goose. Wilbur didn't care. He kept walking toward the slops. "You'll miss your freedom," honked the goose. "An hour of freedom is worth a barrel of slops." Wilbur didn't care. When Mr. Zuckerman reached the pig pen, he climbed over the fence and poured the slops in the trough, and then he pulled the loose board away from the fence so there was a wide hole for Wilbur to walk through. "Reconsider, reconsider," honked the goose. Wilbur paid no attention. He stepped through the fence into his yard, went to the trough, took a long drink of slops, sucking in the milk hungrily and chewing on that popover. It was good to be home again. While Wilbur ate, Larvy fetched a hammer and some 8-penny nails and nailed the board in place, and then he and Mr. Zuckerman leaned lazily on the fence, and Mr. Zuckerman scratched Wilbur's back with a stick. "He's quite a pig," said Larvy. "Yes, he'll make a good pig," said Mr. Zuckerman. Wilbur heard the words of praise. He felt warm milk inside his stomach. He felt the pleasant rubbing of a stick on his itchy back. He felt peaceful and sleepy and happy. This had been a tiring afternoon. It was still only 4 o'clock, but Wilbur was ready for bed. "I'm really too young to go out in the world alone," he thought as he laid down. And that is the end of chapter 3.